as panacea to a progressive nation.
All right, thank you very much, Joseph Hussein, for that background report. We have guests with us here in the studios for today's conversation. They are regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria. Dr. George Moghalu, who is Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the National Inland Waterways, NIWA, Inland Waterways Authority. NIWA is right here in the studios. Dr. Moghalu, glad to have you this morning.
A pleasure. A pleasure.
Also here with us in the studios is Dr. Uyem Akpabio, Executive Director, Institute for Ethics and Professional Studies, based here also in Abuja. Dr. Akpabio, glad to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and we also have with us here in the Abuja studio, Dr. Abdulrahman Abu Hamisu. Dr. Hamisu is a political scientist and public affairs analyst. May I welcome you to this occasion.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll definitely have yet another guest who will be joining us as we make progress in today's conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's good to have you once again with us this morning. Let us begin with a practicing politician. You know, we are talking about setting the national values. Every nation is built on certain principles, values, fundamentals, belief system, and what have you. And all that, you know, affect all facets of our endeavor, politically, economically, socially, and what have you. Now, how would you rate Nigeria, or look at Nigeria as a value system, you know, from inception? That's from 1960 when we gained independence. There has been a trajectory of our behavioral pattern, the way we do things, you know, the way we do politics, the way we carry out our activities as a nation. How do you value our moral values and our general national values as a nation?
It's for me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me start it from this perspective. The mere fact that we're discussing resetting it means that there's a problem. Because if the narrative were correct, if what is happening was expected, in line with what's enshrined in our constitution, in line with our moral values and standards, I don't think the issue of resetting it will come. So for us to be talking about resetting it, it means there's a fundamental problem. And I very much agree with you that we have this challenge and we must look at it critically with a view to actually resetting it, because a society grows by the example of its leaders. And you can't plant orange and expect apple in return. So we are getting, what we are seeing today is rather a reflection of what we sowed. And something has to be done to reset it to the actual way it should be, to reflect the real intentions of those who set it up ab initio. Now, for me, the basic challenge we have here is the fact that we have lost discipline. Because you can't talk about any value without first of all addressing the issue that is fundamental to it, and that fundamental basic is discipline. The society appears to be undisciplined in our actions, in our activities, in our thought pattern and what have you. Because we reflect that indiscipline, it goes down. And indiscipline in a society is such that people learn, people act based on what they see or what they hear. So there is this fundamental, this basic problem that we have a society that is undisciplined. And every resetting we have to do, we have to start it from that basic perspective. Look at it from our schools, look at it from public office, look at it from our individual lives, even in our private lives. How disciplined are we? Because if you don't have a disciplined individual, you cannot have a disciplined society. Because we all reflect, we all act based on the circumstance. And people look up to us. The truth about it is that even in our nuclear families, our children look up to us. And when they see us, what things we do is a reflection, or what things our children do is a reflection of what their parents do. Whether you like it or not. Because if you keep giving instruction, do it this way, do it that way, and you do the negative, the children certainly will do the negative. Because not about what you say this time, it's about what you do. And that is what they learn. And that is what happens in the entire society. Because for you to build a whole society, you have to build a family first. So the failures we have today manifesting in our individual families is what is manifesting in the entire nation. Because we are indisciplined, and we must address that. And the moment we are able to address that, then we have started the process of resetting the entire narrative.
Thank you very much, Dr. George Moralu. Dr. Oyumakpabio, let's also have your take on this. I want to pose my own question this way, but also incorporating the part that Kieran raised, namely, to remind ourselves, at least those of us who are of age, that Nigeria was not always like this. Today we are saying we want to reset our national values. It meant that at some point in time, we had national values that governed us as a people, that governed us as individuals, and that kept us going. But we lost our way. How did we lose our way? And then how can we begin to find our way out of the thicket and then reset those values?
Thank you, Kingsley. Obviously, from the conversation, we know there is a decay in morality. And for every structure that decays, it means that the core, the foundation, needs to be reset, needs to be reevaluated, needs to be re-engineered. Yes, we had values, but why did we not progress? It means we did not build the capacity to progress. We did not build the structures that will support the values, that will support the manifestation in different aspects of our lives. And also that we failed in something very fundamental, because leadership has a responsibility at all levels, at the family level, at the community level, cultural level, social level, professional level. So if we do not progress and we don't develop capacity, it then means that something fundamental must have gone wrong at the selection process. Now, if we come back to the environment, what is going on now, the selection process, leadership selection process, that is very fundamental, because people that find themselves in leadership position, people that lead others, must have a compass, an ethical compass to say, this is where we're going, this is what we have, this is what we want to show. So why did we drop? Why were we not progressing? It means we need, in resetting, we have to look at the selection process of leadership, because the real decay, there's decay generally, but it's more prominent at the level of leadership morality.
Okay, we'll actually go to specifics,
Yes.
as we get on. And let me bring in a political scientist here. From what Dr. Moralu said, it's common knowledge now from that assertion that the behavior of the people is largely determined by the characters of leaders. Right, and in political science, there's this behavioral theory that maybe in PSC 102 or something. Behavioral theory, which is a reflection of the behavior of the people in power, people who direct the affairs of the people. And if the leader goes wrong, definitely, the society will follow suit. Right. So is that a Nigerian situation, or would you read it from any other perspective? That to say, look, what about the value system that we grew up, learning, in our own days? Of course, perhaps we didn't meet this level of indiscipline. Actually, I was also a younger person, when we had the war against indiscipline in the early 80s, where, of course, everybody, to a point, in fact, it was generational. It got to a point where, look, that if you do something that is wrong, somebody will say, look, what I've just done is wrong. If you drop anything on the ground, someone say, pick it up and go to the dustbin and what have you. And that era, just went by like that. And they will not be able to reenact it. So let's get your own perspective to the conversation.
Well, thank you very much for your question. And well, if you look at Nigeria's challenges, it's more or less like the elephant. It is massive. Wherever you touch is what you feel you are seeing. So the question is always, where do you start from? But I want to say this, that the problem of Nigeria and Nigerians is largely the problem of lack of self-governance. Self-governance. What do I mean by that? You know, I know that if I do this, it's wrong. And that whatever negative action I'm going to take will have consequences on those that are around me and far beyond. For instance, somebody that goes to the market square to detonate a bomb, you know, the target may be one person, but the consequences, the unintended consequences, may spread far beyond the intention of that person. Now, it is utterly ridiculous in this country that as a normal human being, you are driving on the highway, you are expecting that there should be a road safety official to direct you on what you need to do to make the road free for those that are coming from behind you. Now, leadership will play a role, and that is why the issues around moral values or resetting moral values keep on failing in this country. Once that leader that wants to reset the value leaves office, that ends it. It shouldn't be so. If you go to other climes, for instance, in Niger, you go to most of the junctions, you don't find gendarme controlling traffic. You come to a roundabout, because they use roundabout a lot, what we call roundabout. They use it a lot in Niger. You don't see any equivalent of our own VIO or road safety directing people. It shows the level of respect for rules, respect for law, and what I choose to call self-governance. Any society where you don't have self-governance, no matter what you tend to do, the interest of those people will destroy whatever you want to do. And that is what we'll be witnessing in Nigeria, starting from Shagari's ethical revolution and Buhari's war against indiscipline. All of those efforts are there. But when you have constellation of thought that are driving people to pursue interests that are utterly different to the collective interests of the people, then you have a problem. And that was what Professor Peter Eke of blessed memory said in his paper, the dual value system he talked about. He said, when the colonialists came, they met our value system. Those value systems are disciplined value system, and illustrated by saying that you have a dual person in every Nigerian. A Nigerian that is accountable and a Nigerian that is corrupt. He said, when you go to the village association or tribal association, these people are holding offices in those associations. They are accountable. They don't steal the association money. They do everything for the association to survive. Because if you do, you are expelled and excommunicated from the association. The same person goes to the office late. He inflates contract. But this is something that you cannot do in the association. In essence, as Dr. Mogalu said, where people are indisciplined, and this indiscipline cannot be enforced. It's not something that you can legislate. It is a collective resolve of a people to say, I will continue to do the right things. Then when you do the right things, it reflects on you, and that is why the late leader of Iranian Revolution, Khomeini, said, if you want to know the attitude of a people, whether they are disciplined or not, he said, use their roads. He said, don't ask any question. Wherever you go, use their roads. Whatever manner you have on the road defines a people. Coming back to our airport, you go anywhere in the world, nobody says, Oga, welcome, what you want to bring, come for us. As soon as you touch down in our airport, everybody will go AY, everybody is running, especially if a VIP, Oga, now welcome, what you will go get, Oga, what you want to bring, come for us. And you want that person to stop smuggling. So it is not even the problem of leadership as far as I'm concerned. I have said this. Previously, I believe that is the problem of leadership. But I'm beginning to question the followership. Today, if you go to your constituency that you want to contest election, the first set of people you will call, the next thing they will ask you is, how much do you have? not how much integrity do you have, or what are you coming to do for us. Once you finish that meeting and you do not distribute brown envelope, the next time you call anybody, they say, don't go and waste your time or you not get anything. How do we develop if our own personal interest is what is driving us? And this brings us to the conversation we need to have, to start interrogating the ideology that is underpinning our political economy. We moved from colonial era to mixed economy. Go and check all the literatures. Apart from Ajik-Boro uprising of 1956 or thereabout, what other crises do we have in Nigeria? Then we have money. Anjana Gawan said the problem is not money but how to spend it. Because the primacy that was governing governance then was collective public interest. So people work tirelessly without expecting anything in return. But they want to retire into their homes. They want to get their... Then suddenly we changed. And we said we want liberal democracy. And from that very particular period, private interests begin to trump public interest. So if I'm to sign a contract, it's not the impact it will have on people. The next thing is what is in there for me. And that is where the erosion of value started. And then because our society usually celebrate those that used to go to the village with big cars, then you are given chieftaincy title. Then all the politicians and all the musicians in your locality continue to sing your praises because you've gone to Nigeria and conquer. What did you conquer? You deny them education, you deny them power, you deny them healthcare, but you are the celebrated brand in the society. And then the young people will grow and say, oh, if this person can make it, then I can make it. So why do I need to go to school? And that is why today you have a generation that is saying, will education help? Whatever you do to make money, so be it. So if you're talking about resetting the value, we must look at those things that are putting pressure on the people. To the extent that however faithful you are as a good Christian, as a good Muslim, a point will come that you have to rethink your stand. When you know that you are going to retire, no home, because federal government is now saying that government cannot do everything alone. And the prices of the private sector, you cannot afford. And then here is a file before you. Your take-home pay is 200,000 naira as a director or deputy director. And then somebody tells you this one, it will just impact Nigerians. This one, you have 10%. Then there is a dilemma. Even the person that will sign, if the person is not a strong Christian or a strong Muslim, they will withhold his signature. And then eventually, if he's to take, even if he goes to consult his wife and children, they'll say, is it only you that is a good Nigerian? That is what everybody is doing. And then you come back, you sign, you get your 10%. So what happened? Nigeria loses.
Okay, Dr. Abu Hamisu, thank you very much for your views. There are, of course, a number of perspectives that all three guests have raised. But I want to start off with the illustrations provided by Dr. Hamisu with regard to driving and the culture of driving. It says if you are driving a car, the way you behave on the road is important. Now, break it down, driving. For you to drive, you must be qualified to drive. How many drivers on Nigerian roads are actually qualified to be at the wheels driving? And qualification to drive means first knowledge of the traffic code. Two, it means certification. After a period of training, you go to driving school and you are trained, and then of course you then go for testing by the VIO to be sure that you can drive. And I'm sure we all see it. You'll see a learner with a sign dangling on the front plate or the rear plate. And the learner is the only person in that vehicle driving, which is against the rules. If you are a learner and you are driving, somebody who is certified to drive is supposed to sit with you while you are driving. You have seen in our urban centers, you have a learner's permit. It's a permit you have, not a license, on front and back. Probably it's a woman or a man, and then you have children inside the vehicle. And the learner is the one who is driving. And so, if somebody said, no problem, I'll get the license for you. I will get it. I'll process the license for you. And the person processes the license. Where is your license? You whip it out and you see the license is genuine. But we know that you do not, in fact, deserve that license. Which comes back to what Dr. Moghalu was saying about self-discipline. If the individual is a center of universe, if that individual doesn't have discipline in the first instance, what are you taking out to interactions with others? Dr. Moghalu, how can we begin to get into, again, we call it self-administration, self-governance, to say, I shouldn't do this? Is it because we don't fear the consequence of the wrong thing, or we don't say anything goes? Something is supposed to speak to you, your inner mind, to say, this is not right.
Yes. You see, it gets back to the business. You used with regards to driving and the explanation you offered. Somebody is supposed to drive that vehicle. You know you are a learner. You're exposing everybody to risk. You don't have a driver's license. You are carrying children in the car. The person who is supposed to be with you, a certified driver, is not there. And you set out to the road. What are you expecting? Now, somebody offers to get you driving license. In fact, situations now is that you can even get the license before you start driving. There are situations like that. You get the license before you start driving. Because I've found myself in a situation where I asked somebody about, I was to recruit a driver. And then I was a lot younger, and then I said I want to be in the vehicle for me to see how you drive. And to be honest with you, he doesn't deserve to drive. So when I now asked him, how long have you been driving? He said, it's not long, less than 1 year. Then I said, can I see your driver's license? He gave me a driver's license. And the license is 4 years.
The first license?
You are the one saying it.
For what?
As far as he's concerned,
Yes.
the license is genuine. He's licensed to drive. In fact, he got the license before he started driving. Now, you can't plant an orange and expect apples. The basic fundamental problem we have is that we have lost the values at home. There's massive indiscipline at home. Parents don't ask questions today like they asked before. Like when Kingsley started, he made one comment. He said, where did we get it wrong? Because if we're talking about resetting, that's what I said in the beginning, if we're talking about resetting, it means that he was right before, then it's gone wrong. We want to tune it back for it to go back to be right again. So the question now is, where did we start? Where did we start getting it wrong? Because there's this Igbo proverb that if you don't know where the rain started beating you, you won't know when it will stop. You must identify where your problem is, then to be able to address it. Today, what are the core values within the society? We have gone to an extent where the entire process is monetized. Our orientation now is mercantile. Everything you talk about in the society today is reduced to naira and kobo. Nobody is looking at the value system. And that is why you come to a society, you see a professor within the society, within the community, and in the process of a meeting, a young man will say, oh no, this is not for English, it's for donation. This is time for donation, leave all this too much English. And then they will call one person who we all know is a thief, but he has the resources and he donates the needed money in the community. Every focus is now transferred to him. He becomes the issue. And then the young ones who are growing will now see him as the role model. excuse me, how he made the money is immaterial. Now you now compare such a person with a man of integrity, a man whose career you can trace from point one to point B. And then he goes back again to what Madam did say about our values in terms of choosing leadership. Because everybody looks up to somebody. In our immediate homes, our children look up to us. In the society looks up to somebody. I want to be like so and so person. Time was when we were growing up. When you sit down, they ask you who want to be like. You call the American president, you call so and so person, you call the professor in your village, you call the engineer. Then, as children, you choose titles: engineer, doctor.
So you want to be a mathematician?
Yes,
like Chico B.
Yes, like Chico B. You want to be like Chico B.
Africa.
So these are the things that drive us then. These are the things that drive those. As at the point Kingsley said, was that time when the values were genuine, when the commitments were visible. And then even in your homes, your parents will tell you, no, even your father who did not go to school, even your father who is a businessman, will tell you that, listen, whatever you're doing, I want you to be like doctor. He didn't tell you to be like him because he knows he has a deficiency. He thought he wants to be like Chico B. Chico B is a human being. I remember when there was exams we took, and then I came third in that exams in my secondary primary school, and I came home feeling very good, and then presented my report card to my father that I came third. He didn't talk. So when we finished eating, he called me. He said, those people that came first and second, did they pay extra school fees?
Did they have 2 heads?
I felt very foolish. I was excited that in a class of 40, I came third. He said, I don't know people's children. Why would his own come third when somebody's own came first and second? What I was expecting, the celebration I was expecting I will get, I was denied. He asked me that if I want to be celebrated in this house, that when I next exams, I must confess. So that he can now be bold enough to now call my younger ones and then tell them that you have confessed, so we have to celebrate you. So that is the problem we have. The challenge is that we have said it wrong. We have shifted our values from what it should be to what it should not be. Today, what we are talking about is success in terms of material wealth, not in terms of character, not in terms of credibility. Like you observed, during the time we had a war against indiscipline in this country, you can't throw out trash. You come, you see people queue.
A young boy of 7 or 8
will
embarrass you.
Will tell you that thing you shouldn't throw it away.
Exactly.
Yes, why? You should queue. You come to the airport and it happens like you rightly observed. Don't you go to airports abroad? Then we must also interrogate the process through which leaders are brought up. Because they are role models, they are examples people look up to. If we run a system where you can fraudulently, somebody you know has no character, somebody you know has no value to add to the society, he's thrown up into leadership position, you cannot give what you don't have. So when you find yourself in such a situation, what do you expect? The society is a reflection of those who are administering it.
Exactly. I will stop here for now, because you have hit nail on the head. Against part of what Dr. Ahamisu, did say with respect to whether the leaders are responsible for this. So we're talking about resetting. Who will reset it? You can't go from family to family to begin to reset. Right. And then people who are now in power should be able to do that. That was why I went to why those days. Now, do we need to legislate discipline to be able to effect consequences of misbehavior, either in governance, in families, and what have you? That's what I want I guess Dr. Uyema Akpabio, to speak to. And again, let me say this, because this discipline thing, the former Prime Minister of Britain, Boris Johnson, had to resign as a result of indiscipline. He held a party during COVID-19. What is that? A Prime Minister of a country left. Even the previous one, Cameron, I recall he had an issue of tax, either that his father did not pay tax or that he inherited his father so he didn't pay tax. He paid it as a Prime Minister of a nation. So now that means that if a growing child in Britain will not look, if a Prime Minister can be this disciplined, I will be. So, madam, do we need to legislate discipline to see how we can, because there's no way we can reset it deliberately without using some kind of law, to be able to do that, or some kind of machinery, which we saw about the National Legislation Agency of the early 80s, which also made it possible for Nigerians to begin to be, sensitized about misbehavior and so on. Should we legislate discipline, in our system?
Thank you, Karen. The law is already there. The provision is there. So why are we not complying? It means some issues were raised here. The issue of capacity in the example given of the driver's license and so on. The issue of capacity was given. Then in the issue of leadership, role modeling, not just at all levels, starting from family, cultural, social, professional, and the rest of it. Then the issue of high expectation, because somebody said that the father said, why were you not? So do we have expectations in trying to self-regulate? Discipline is actually something that is a personal responsibility. It's already there. It's a personal responsibility, but there must be structures in place. We have the policies, we have the legal instruments, we have all those, but we also need to put ethical structures, ethical infrastructure. For example, in 2017, during the budget speech, Mr. President said, under my watch, that old Nigeria will fade away, a new one will emerge. And how was a new one going to emerge? We will change our habits and change Nigeria. Fundamental. Big declaration. But we all went to sleep. What structure was put in place? Did we have an ethics infrastructure? Now at the presidency, did we have an office that will run with this? That was a presidential declaration, a clarion call of monumental value, realizing that we have derailed, and under my watch it's going to be restored. And this is a strategy that we will change attitude and change Nigeria. Now, what attitude are we going to change? Discipline. Now, the baseline is lawfulness and unlawfulness. We know that the issue is lawlessness. That's anything goes. That's the issue of this. Anything goes. Why should anything go? Why is it not going in foreign other climes? Because the ethical structures are there. In Nigeria, if at the presidential level, at the ministerial level, at the state government level, family, social level, do we have ethics committees? And ethics committees are not manned by just anybody. Have we developed a critical mass of people that understand the issues so that they can be value creators as trainers, as coaches, as counselors, as ethics auditors, and as compliance officers? This is what is happening globally. That's why you will not see somebody in that Nigeria roundabout, because the ethics committee is working. You have critical mass of people that know their job as counselors, ethics counselors, at different units, as coaches and trainers, creating values.
Please do explain further.
Yes.
What is ethics infrastructure or ethics structure? And when I say the law, does it exist in Nigeria? Or if not, how can we effect it?
Okay. Now we already have as a national objective or social objective, we know that Nigeria sits on a tripod of freedom, equality, justice. And then we have the political objectives of peace, faith, unity, progress. Now, and these things are now broken down into policies and so on and so on. But do we have an ethics infrastructure? Meaning, a creation of government as an ethics office that has, where capacity is developed, critical mass of professionals are developed, with a budgetary line, because how would you implement an ethics policy when you say we will change our habits and change Nigeria? Who will implement it? Who will drive it? What's under what structure? Because now what the issue will be, if this comes, under which ministry, under which structure, under this. Now, when you have that, you now know that at different units, you will have ethics committees. We see it all over. We read about it. There's no environment that you go that you don't have an ethics and risk committees. We even hear of scandals in government projects, big agencies, and you now go in there and see there's no ethics committee, because that becomes the first structure, the first unit that ensures there's accountability, or if you are doing any audit, that is where you get the information. So we cannot go beyond our capacity. Ethics is a skill. You, like every other skill, you acquire it. But most importantly, just like we said, leadership is very important, because leaders are influencers at the family level, at the cultural level, the professional level, the political level, and all that. Leaders are influencers. And there are pillars, of character for leaders. You even just looking at your members, you start thinking of my head as a leader. Am I visionary? That is where the eye is. Is my tongue mild for me to have temperate or utterance? Are my hands clean? That is integrity. Is my mind sound? That is capacity. Do you have knowledge and skill too? Because the issue of the driver and the license is basic. For you to be law abiding, you must have the capacity, knowledge that to drive, you must know how to put gear and all that. And if by any chance you miss it, then something corrects you. And in trying to drive the leadership role, you see somebody mentors you, the driver mentors you. Who is mentoring in ethics? Who is counseling? Who is coaching?
Yes.
Add something.
You want to add something?
Yes. For me, granted, the perspective Dr. Babio raised, but I think the key here is the driver of the process, the drivers at all levels. You see, because you can put laws like we have enough. You can put regulations like we have enough. But somebody has to be at the head. And the mistake we keep making is that we see leadership only from the political perspective. But the impact of leadership is more at the non-political levels, beginning with the homes. Because if there are values that the family does not accept, and remember, I copied this from an older, very senior friend. The only advice he gives his children when they're traveling overseas, and he does that at the airport when they are going, he sees them off to the airport. He calls you. He says, remember whose son you are. Before you take any decision, remember whose son you are. Before you do anything, remember whose son you are. Ask yourself, will daddy accept it? The moment you ask yourself, will daddy accept it, and you feel that I will accept it, do it. But if I will not accept it, don't do it. Refrain. He turns back and goes. I copied it from him. You see, because it's a very powerful tool. You have put a serious burden on the person. It goes back to now look at it from the perspective of who is my father? Who is that person? Because we, the parents, no matter how we look at it, we are the first people our children look up to in our actions, in our deeds. And then we translate it to society. Because if somebody knows that his dad is dishonest, his dad cannot be trusted, and if that his dad goes to public office, what do you expect him to do? He will still reflect who he is. And then it will run down on society. So for me, leadership is key, very strategic, but leadership at all levels, not necessarily at political level.
Sorry if I just,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you. I know what Dr. Akpabi were itching to say something. Let's also take a look at this. You know, there are a number of modes of learning. And part of what you have spoken about this morning has to do with imitation.
Yeah.
Imitation is a very powerful mode of learning. When you look at the animal kingdom, particularly for simians, you know, apes, and then when you get to the highest order, which is human beings, the way we grow is by imitation. I see my parents do this, I do it. I see my elder ones do this, I do it. I see my neighbors do this, I do this. In the process of imitating them, if I don't get sanctioned for bad behavior, and then I inculcate that bad behavior and I exhibit it. But if I get sanctioned for it, don't try that thing next time. And the profile you raised, Dr. Mogalo, to say, remember the child of whom you are, is something that is embedded in your brain. At all material times, why should I do this? Why should I do this? Yes, it's like a shocker. It brings you back to reality when you seek to derail. But I don't know, because sometimes we get pressed for time on this program. We can go on and on discussing this. I throw this in from time to time when I ask the question about, hey, Nigeria wasn't always like this. We can't go back to that era now. But the destruction of the civil service in 1975 and 76, following those mass purges, wrecked the vast control systems that ordinarily would have had, either in the bureaucracy, in restraint, in maintenance of law and order. Our people have a saying that it is what makes a child to laugh that will also make a child to cry if you are not careful. When we were reading those headlines in the Daily Times, in the Nigerian Observer, and hearing it on radio, you said you hear 250 dismissed. So those are now retired. These are persons who were being compulsorily retired. I mean, the story was told of a very powerful head of civil service of the Federation, or chairman of the Federal Civil Service in Lagos. You retired and then you were kicked out of your accommodation in Ikoyi, and you were on the street. Everywhere, there were persons who were retired out of vengeance, out of vendetta, and so on and so forth. And those who were left behind now ask themselves the question, if this could happen to our superiors, then I should find ways of forestalling that same thing happening to me. So we started now bending the rules, twisting the rules, X, Y, Z. And here we are today. I keep raising this, Dr. Abu Hamisu. But we are here today. How do we get back? I know Dr. Akpabio raises this issue of having ethics. Actually, a committee will be part of the ethics structure or ethics infrastructure. In parts of the private sector, you do have this. Go to the financial services sector, for instance. You have compliance units. If you're a credit officer, for you to give out credit for secure transactions, you must be sure that the person to whom you are extending the credit has the capability to pay. Not that you have been compromised to approve the credit, because the more credit that goes out, of course, before you know it, the bank bottoms out, the institution collapses and everybody goes. So you have compliance officers, and they come from different disciplines. And then you also have officers who check one on another in the private sector, depending on the type of business that it is. But mostly in the public sector, we don't have this. And then mostly also in our homes, we don't have it. There are parents who have abandoned parenting. There are parents who have also engaged in over-parenting. You don't allow your children to grow. You are afraid, I'm doing this for my children. I'm doing this for my children. And then this is where we are. Dr. Hamisu.
Well, you see, I said something earlier on. Dr. Mogalo talked about the shift. The shift. Where did we get it wrong? The violation. And I said it. You cannot have a situation whereby the entire political economy architecture of a country elevates private interests and benefit over and above the collective public interest. So, for instance, going back in the days, the incentive for people to work is the reward system. The reward system. I am working for my retirement. I don't want my career to be touched by any query whatsoever. And I know that if I retire, I will get my retirement benefit, including the house I deserved. So I put in the best to guard government business, so that at the end of it all, I will be celebrated. Now, you now import another brand of practice, and we call it public-private partnership, where we are witnessing the massive transfer of public asset into private ends. Then issues around retrenchment. And don't forget the fact that you have family members who are fathers, uncles, aunts that are under pressure, either by their children that are in the universities. And then we talk about cost-reflective pricing, that government can no longer pay subsidy, and that everybody must become a local government unto himself. So you provide security for yourself, you build house for yourself, you provide water for yourself, healthcare, you pay for it. And all of these are costs that are coming left, right, center. So the person is already under pressure. And the person must leave. So sometimes people get involved in corruption, in abuse of office, not because they like it, but because they are being drawn, they are being overwhelmed by the demand that is being placed by government policies on them. So if you want people to be upright, I bet you Madam talked about ethical infrastructure. If you like, print the Quran and the Bible and hang it over everybody's neck in this country. Once there is a pressure, they will choose not to see the Quran or the Bible around their necks. People commit heinous crimes in their offices and they call to prayer, they go and pray 5 daily prayers. Even if their conscience is speaking them, is within, they will just say, well, God is all knowing, is all forgiving, he will forgive us. And the same thing happens to the Christians. So it's not as if the people that are acting this way are bad people. But when the society is structured in such a way that as you are coming out this morning, Mr. Kingsley, your child's school calls you to say you are owing school fees for say 2 years, and your landlord is coming. I'm sure you will not be comfortable to anchor this very particular because you know that you have a crisis in you. And somebody will even say, well, why? What is happening? It's not composed today. What is making you not to be composed? It's not because they planted needles on the seat you are seated. The needles are coming from different directions.
Do I appear to be feeling those way?
Because you are the driver here. If you are not comfortable, we will not be comfortable. Even the questions. So now what we are saying is simple. When the Chinese wanted to develop, they started with rationing of rice. So you have a coupon. So if you get one noodle for 1 week, that is one noodle for 1 week. It was a sacrifice, and they knew that they were making sacrifice. And today, we are talking about rice in China because there are two systems in place. The system that reward both the rich and the poor. And then another safeguard.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interject. Explain this further. You see, when the Chinese were rationing rice,
yes,
say the equivalent of 1 mudu per week,
yes,
they will not give Kyrian 1 mudu and then give me 2 mudu. Yes. Say, Kinsina, because now you.
Yes.
So what informs that behavior? Everybody will get one because you see where it's at. You get one, I get one, she gets one. Yes. Everybody know that you give me, you give Kyrian one. I don't care. You like to take 2 when I get one.
I've said that earlier. Yes. It's self-governance. The officials believe that if I do that, it's an invitation to chaos, and because it's an invitation to chaos, they wouldn't do that themselves, because that will cast them in bad light. And when they come around tomorrow to talk to the people, the people will not listen to them because they know that you are lying. This is what is happening in our own situation. The second thing again is that there is an effective check system. The first check on those officials are the peasants themselves. If they give you 2 modus, he will tell you, I don't deserve it. All I deserve is 1 modus. Give me 1 modus so that you will go around.
Self-governance.
Self-governance.
Greed. In other words, tell me greed.
Okay. Then in Nigeria,
that's part of the issue of discipline.
Yes.
Discipline.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to land, please. Just 2 seconds. Okay. Now, the person that's supposed to enjoy the 2 is telling you that I don't need it. I only deserve 1 modus. Right. Now, if that same person reports you, he is the one that is going to report you to the authority, and they will follow through to ensure that this person is punished. Yes, and that is why I was disagreeing with Dr. Mogalu that it takes 2 to better the society. We could say leaders, but who elect the leaders?
Okay, just like the Chinese statistics you are giving, I don't know whether what I read last week is correct. The Chinese justice, Supreme Court justice or something,
yes,
has been sentenced to death.
Yes,
for receiving $16 million for the bribe.
Yes,
and he's going to die.
Yes, is it the justice or the Minister of Defense? Or
Minister of Defense or whatever. So that's what discipline. And someone told me a story. He lives in Japan actually, and he said, look, that in Japan, they're not religious in the first place.
Yes.
I mean, they're not religious. Yeah. But if you leave your phone in the marketplace today, if you come back tomorrow, you go there, you pick it up.
Yes.
You pick it up. So let's
the Japanese are religious. They have the Shinto. They may not be predominantly Christian. Shinto. It's traditional religion.
So now
the restraint.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short break now. But when we come back, there are some specific issues I'd like us to interrogate. Exam malpractice, which some parents are also aiding their children to do. Internet fraud, they will call Yahoo today. Giving cheap titles without a background check. What is the role of traditional rulers who give these titles? The role of religious leaders as well, who welcome stolen funds and all of that. We're going to interrogate all this when we return. We'll take a short break now, and we'll be back shortly.
I, Muhammad Buhari,
I, Yemi of Shimbabwe,
wish all Nigerians happy Christmas and prosperous New Year. The security situation in Nigeria has been reasonably stable in spite of activities of unpatriotic elements engaged in various criminal activities around the country. Daily situation reports coming in from states. 2 months ago, it has shown relative peace on many of our highways, such as Abuja, Kaduna Birnin Gwari, Sokoto, Zamfara, Kaduna.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Every day in our country, senior citizens are discriminated against, disparaged, and treated with disdain by those who ought to respect them. We are all complicit in the way we have treated the elderly members of our society as institutions, families, or members of a shared society. Every time senior citizens get offered less than they deserve for the work they do because they are old, poor, and desperate, we are failing them. Senior citizen loses a child, and wow, they must be responsible for their death. Every time a senior citizen gets labeled a witch, is called mad, and shooed out of the way because they have no memory of where they were headed and look unkempt, we are failing them. We say, abeg, it all old, make it do die, make everybody for rest, to ailing parents, uncles and aunts. That's discrimination. That is neglect. When you see an old woman getting beat up and being accused of witchcraft, do not turn the other way. Stop and teach people that white hairs, wrinkles, and hunchbacks are no evidence of witchcraft. Aging comes with a memory decline. Sometimes it's not out of place to have elderly people lose their way, forget details of their lives, and how to properly take care of themselves. When they get to this stage, they deserve your empathy, not scorn. Our ailing fathers, mothers, aunties, and uncles are deserving of quality healthcare and peaceful transition. Make their last moments memorable. Senior citizens have paid their dues. They deserve your care. Stop all forms of discrimination against them today.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
All right, so still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now we are looking at resetting national values. How do Nigerians behave? In the course of our conversation, one of our guests raised the issue of drive culture, that the way people drive could to some extent determine their behavioral pattern or their character. I had that way back in the early 80s. I used to have a friend, who was residing in Australia. He returned at some point in 1985 for the first time since he spent about 10 years or thereabout before he came. So then there was no way against discipline anyway, because I think it was 82 around that, because Shagari was still in power there. I was younger, and he said, is this how people drive here? I said, yes. He said, no. He said, that should not be. I said, well, he said, no. He said, everybody is not disciplined in this country. I said, how could you? He said, look from the head of state to the baby on the street. That was the language he used. He said, because what he saw, he said, he can't even walk on the street, because of the way people drive. He said, it's dangerous. And so, meanwhile, for me, it was normal.
Has it been back since then? So
I don't know, that's it, because I lost contact with him, and all that. And that is what is also obtainable in all other aspects of our behavior, how we value. As a matter of fact, parents go out working out how their child will pass examination, JAMB. They're prepared to bribe for it. So the thing has eaten into the fabric of even the family system and all of that. And I was just wondering, how can this be reversed? Should there be a legislation? Should there be a kind of enforcement? Because if you say resetting, who will reset it? If families do not take it up upon themselves to say, look, let me start this resetting here. I remember some people have already taken up their behavior, what they believe in, and they're behaving that way. And many children or younger people are not even under their parental care anymore. Children that should be with their parents are no longer there. They're on the streets, fending for themselves, deciding for themselves, taking decisions in a harsh economy and what have you. So, how do we get back to it all? Should it be a political movement that will bring this about, or should it be religious? I raised the issue of what are the roles of religious and the traditional rulers in all of this, because after said and done, they are closer to the people.
When you talked about legislation, we have enough laws today to address most of these challenges. But I think the emphasis has to be now on the societal influencers. You have them in politics, you have them in the churches, you have them in the traditional institution, you have them in the agencies that government has created, like the National Orientation Agency and what have you. These are societal influencers, and they need to come to terms with the reality of the moment. Today you have some churches where once the man is influential, he sits on the front row. What example are you setting? Mm-hmm. Once we expect you come to church and there's someone going on, the moment it is a church that has assuming it's a burial ceremony or you have very important persons there that money can be gotten from, the church will now be deviated from the normal service to fundraising. It's generally applicable.
It is.
Now, even the parents themselves, like you rightly observed, some parents go out of their way to go and talk to school. Why did how do I help my child to pass JAMB? How do I help my child to get the certificate, this and that? So, societal influencers have a role to play. The traditional rulers, like I think either you or Kingsley mentioned in the past, giving titles. You see traditional rulers celebrating people who should not ordinarily be allowed to come into the society, but you celebrate them because probably for mercantile considerations, not necessarily because of who the person is or what he has contributed to society. So these are issues, but the thing is that we have to consistently bring it to the limelight. We need to get people consciously aware that these influencers have a role to play. We encourage them to be talking. We encourage them to communicate, while at the same time ourselves, we get the families to understand the implication, because the way we live is a reflection of the society we live in. And then we set examples for people to look at. And that is why when Dr. Hamisu was talking about, the emphasis is not that the followership is exempted from this malice. No, because the society reflects the reaction of the leaders. For example, when we leaders come to the local communities to ask for their vote and their support, we make promises we know Abuja we're not going to keep. We promise them heaven on earth. We promise them everything. And by the time we go, we fail them. We do it first time, the second time, the third time, they will say no. Yeah. Let's go to what we can get now. Because once the man, we give him this vote and he wins this election, we don't see him again. So the society is actually, the followership is actually reflecting or reacting to the actions of the leadership. Because we throw people who have no character and credibility up. And that's why they now come, when we come for election, the wonderful person who has character, who has credibility, but doesn't have the money to pay his way through, will lose. Because the person who has his way through will buy his way through. The people will say, okay, let me collect this one I'm seeing now, because if this man goes back to Abuja, we will see him again until next election. So it goes back again to the same leadership. Because if we have an accountable system where you come back, that's why in our elections, fortunately, the INEC and their team are resetting the entire process to the extent that the vote will now count. Politicians will now come home to present their report card to their people. I went to Abuja. This is what I was able to achieve. This is what I was able to do. They use that as a basis to see whether I'm going to be re-elected or not. So we are getting to that stage on a gradual process. So you see, everybody has to be involved in resetting the entire agenda. It is all involving, all inclusive, both the political influencers, the societal influencers, the religious influencers, the leadership, because there are societies that people control, whether you like it or not. There are various communities, the traditional ruler is so influential by his action to the extent that he has earned the confidence of the people. So whatever he says, people listen to him. Same thing applies to churches. And because we see in our country, we're very religious, whether Christian, whether Muslims, we are all very religious. So the religious leaders at their levels have a lot of role to play in this regard. They have to set example not only by what they say, but also by the way they live.
That if some of the religious leaders are behaving like the members of the congregation.
Correct. So that is why there's a general reorientation, because it's not about what you say. Just do what I say, but don't do what I do. No, it cannot work. People have to look up, like you give that example. People look at you. It's exemplary. People naturally we copy. We copy positive and negative. It's a matter of getting the people to understand that the ones negative are not necessary and will not add any value to society.
Okay, madam and gentlemen, we are on the home stretch. In terms of also resetting our national values, can we briefly take a look at those things that we cherish? I'm not of the view that we do not have laws or provisions in the Constitution. Section 23 of the Constitution, Section 24, and some other sections scattered in the Constitution all relate to the values that we're talking about, either value of discipline, of patriotism, self-reliance, avoidance of greed, as well as helping your community and the well-being of the society. Everything is abundant there. But is it possible for us to say, maybe we begin to now ask ourselves the question, because the rat race that we find all around, the greed that we find all around, appears to be targeted at something. Let me just make money. Make money. Dr. Moghalu talked about the mercantilism in our society, these days. Everything just money. And it is how you get it, that unexplained wealth or otherwise is immaterial. Let me have money. Do we understand the language and spirit of money? That money is value-based. That money without value is meaningless. At the end of the day, anyway, whatever money you have, the day the person dies, it won't go beyond 6 feet. So, can we, all the Yahoo, kidnapping for ransom, whatever it is that you are talking about, can people begin to have a rethink? Just say, money, yes, it's a money speaks. Money can only speak to an extent. And if money is speaking to whom, is money speaking, and is the person listening? If the person is listening, is the person also responding? How can we begin to talk to ourselves about how we say money? The richest nations in the world today, the United States, China, Japan, Germany, and other advanced OECD countries. Yes, they are wealthy. Their values drive their wealth creation. But then they also have a moral fabric. All these ones that we are doing, as the saying goes, doing all over the place, and we're in crisis. Dr. Akpabio.
Yes, in resetting our values, we need to reset our expectations and move away from pecuniary displays and motivation to serving the public interest and the general good. For example, in the social is awash with I don't even know how to call it, the culture of spraying currency, displaying money in events and so on. We have moved from currency notes to throwing bundles, and in some cases even bullion banks and so on. Now the entire system is polluted with the spraying of currency and money. So the motivation, the focus, the expectation is pecuniary. In resetting, we need to change our expectations and motivation from pecuniary motives to serving the general good. What does the economic objective say? Like I said, that we have to harness our resources and distribute it to serve the general good. And the economic system should not entrench or build a system that wealth is centered in the hands of a few or group. So it's at the community level, the traditional rulers, they have a responsibility. What is their expectation? They expect to be respected. Respect is mutual, but they must show character to be respected. They expect to be followed, but they should influence positively. Because when you show love, empathy, and your expectations are right, you will get followers. Traditional institutions and authorities, they have power at that level to ensure that high standards are met by saying, this is the structure, these are the people, even having some people within the council or within the community, that anybody that breaks this bound of decorum, this is the sanction. And anybody that performs exceptionally well, this is the reward. And you have a community honors role. It's not just in hotels and all that to say the best staff for the month and so on. At community level, they should have honors role. And it's from the honors role that when it comes to where and when leaders are to be selected, the traditional ruler said, fine, we have a catalog. We have the honors role. If you fall into the honors role, you are a candidate. If you fall on the blacklist, we don't want you to represent our community. So there's a responsibility. In this same issue of expectation, just like the example that doctor gave. I have this experience. My father of blessed memory, when we were going to school, we all have had files. When we are going back to school, we are expected to write how we spent our holiday and post it. Then it used to be a letter with stamp, and post it. You will put it, do all the grammatical correction and put in your file. And when you come back on holidays, you write about your experience the first week. So you see the expectation. What time do you have? So it's like the eye is monitoring you, because the expectation, you're expected to say, how did it go? What did you do? And all that. I didn't. Then as children, we didn't know, but we just wouldn't be doing what other people. We feel the eye is watching us. It's a question of expectation and setting standard. Just like you said, why were you not the first and second? Setting at the community level. What do you want your community to be known for? The people that you bring up from your community, if you want them to excel at another level, then you put structures there and ensure that you sanction unethical conduct, you reward the other. And when it comes to political, social, professional, any level of leadership selection, you refer to it. So the people now know that you already have honors role at that level.
Yeah, so ethical practice should be, it should permeate all aspects of our life. It should pervade all aspects of our life. The irony of this all is that Nigeria is one of the countries that produce a more number of pilgrims, across the globe. Either going to Saudi Arabia or Jerusalem or Rome, as the case may be. And in most cases, when people return from those pilgrimages, instead of coming back with a spiritual message, they will be selling some wares which they bought. Some of them will even be charged for extra, baggaging and what have you. So one would ask, how does such thing reflect in our day-to-day activities? At the point, government is even sponsoring pilgrimages or something that should be an individual thing. And what have you, and in some cases they use it to do a kind of a payback, reward system for politicians who campaign during politics. You put your name, you are going to Israel for pilgrimage. Suddenly that person is not going there to go and pray, and all of that. So these are the things, and because you see somebody was nobody in terms of his behavior and character, could be criminal. Because he joined a political party, before you know it, he's raising mansions here and there, and even driving convoy. And you ask yourself, if this guy can do this, man, I've been better than him all this while. So if you can do this, I can do even much better. And they all put in here, and when that happens, the thing begins to affect the entire society. I think it's part of what we are suffering today. In this time, we don't have time really to go on with this conversation, because there are a number of issues and perspectives that we could also, bring in, to make it a full-fledged conversation. So at this point, we'd like to thank all of you for being here this morning. Dr. George Moralo, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, National Inland Waterways Authority. Thank you for coming.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Dr. Wim Akpabio, Executive Director, Institute for Ethics and Professional Studies. It's been wonderful talking to you this morning.
It's a pleasure.
Good to see you again.
Thank you very much.
And my fellow political scientist, Dr. Abdulrahman Abu Hamisu, with due respect. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And that's it. On today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We'll see you again on Monday. My name is Kieran Omayo. Do have a great weekend.
That's right. Enjoy your independence holidays. Look after yourselves. Monday is a public holiday, by the way, but Good Morning Nigeria returns same time, 7 o'clock in the morning on Monday. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.